Hello, everyone. I wanted to use this week's podcast to contribute to the dialogue that we've been having the last few weeks around police brutality, Black Lives Matters, from my perspective, professionally and personally. I also want to use this time to provide some tips of how we can actually together help move things forward. And in the moment, particularly right now, amidst what's going on, what we can do to manage our emotions around this.
I'm Dr. Catalina Lawson, a licensed clinical psychologist, and I love talking about sex. Sex Marks the Spot is a podcast that bridges the gap between what we know and what we actually do when it comes to sex, relationships, and health.
But I'm a first-generation immigrant. My parents immigrated from the Philippines, and I was born in Cali, but then raised in South Carolina. And for my career, I went to school in Indiana, Colorado, DC, Florida, and then moved to larger cities such as like DC and New York, and now I'm in LA. But it really wasn't until my later adulthood that I actually did have other people of color around me. And certainly growing up in the South, it was very, very clear the disparities between blacks and whites. And as many other Asian Americans have been speaking up right now, we consider ourselves as allies. We certainly can empathize with some of the experience that Black individuals endure. But by no means, I guess one of the biggest things that I find is that this is not a competition amongst people of color. And I know that myself, throughout my life, I found it hard to have conversations with other individuals of other ethnicities or races because of this almost, oh, you don't understand. And I guess that's why I said at the very beginning, this is from one of the things I think we have to appreciate is that we don't have to have experienced everything that someone else has experienced to actually empathize and to actually foster equality. Just as we are all born differently and born into different situations, different skin colors, I think that's the biggest thing. Because what I feel like blocks actual discussions is immediate fear of offending as well as guilt. Guilt that, oh, what have I done to foster this? What have I done to actually maintain or exacerbate racism? And so I guess a bit of this is really us taking this time to slow ourselves down. And first and foremost, stop and pause to actually notice where we are. Right now, one thing that we are seeing is a lot of reactivity, whether that be from that you're seeing during protests or online or in conversations you're having. We're just seeing reactivity. And one of the things that I've certainly been discussing with my clients this last week and a half, as well as personal individuals who have a personal relationship with me, is acknowledging this frustration that people are having with the riots. And one thing I really remind them is okay, all we're seeing is reactions that are part of this system. And I know that there's definitely people who are seeing both sides of that, but that's really everything that we are seeing right now is based on basic human behavior of generations and generations of oppression, but that are maintained and reinforced by institutional, socio-cultural, economic institutions. And so this is where so much of my work does come down to working with individuals and beginning to actually change how we are reacting, how we react individually to fear, ignorance, and aggression. And I know for me personally, this is an ongoing journey where I'm still figuring out how to use my voice. I mean, so much of this podcast for me is figuring out how I use my voice. So much of my research since 1998 has been for African Americans and recent immigrants here in the United States. So much when the COVID happened, the number one thing I spoke up about was very much how we're going to see the disparities. We're going to see how economic and medical, all of the systemic disparities, which come down to race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, are going to actually divide us. And then on top of it, we have a long period of anxiety, uncertainty, and fatigue to further exacerbate. Unfortunately, everything that's been coming up over the last couple weeks is yet another layer to the uncertainty and angst that everyone has to cope with right now. What I really want to encourage, and I'm doing this more to hold myself accountable and also encourage myself, is first and foremost, be kind. Trying to be kind to myself and also be kind to others, to just listen rather than immediately react to conversations around this and opinions. And also I want to encourage people, particularly white individuals or people who are not, if you are feeling guilty, to sit with that, lean into it and figure out what that is about. Are you feeling guilty for what? And what do you need to do to self-soothe that? So that this isn't a conversation in vain, but that it is actually a moment or an experience that actually heightens awareness and then ultimately shifts your own behaviors. That is really where, when we are talking about this change, it is essential for us to begin to do change on our own, acknowledge what is going on us individually, and give our space to ourselves to explore this and have conversations that may be incredibly uncomfortable. But then I say this to individuals on whichever side, to actually look for individuals that you have a different point of view from, and actually use this as an opportunity to get curious, to listen, to learn and unlearn a lot of the reactions, rather than so that you can choose how you want to contribute to moving us forward. So I'll leave today just really reminding us to be gentle, be kind, be open, and be loving. These are not just taglines. These are not just, words that you can just say. These actually need to be things that you believe in and that you then choose to live by. And knowing it is hard, knowing that life right now for all of us is incredibly hard, incredibly uncertain, and very stressful. And so it very much is important for us to take ownership of our own emotions, control those, and be able to manage those, to harness that energy, and if that is anger and frustration, to harness it effectively. And let's just manage our expectations around this to actually move forward. All right, I hope this was helpful. And I'm going to keep talking about this, particularly in my work as it relates to our relationships and how transgenerational trauma actually affects how we connect to ourselves and others. And it very much is in our closest relationships that we learn most of these biases, these explicit and implicit biases. So stay tuned, and please, again, this was a brief contribution to this dialogue. And I absolutely am open to more conversations around this. DM me, or let's set up a time to chat, and let's keep the dialogue open. All right, guys, stay safe and healthy out there, and be kind. Cheers.